Hey, what's up guys? This is Tim Weaver with Studio 4 Media, and today we're going to be taking a look at how to create a realistic twister inside of Maya, just like the same effect that is used in that movie with Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton where they're running around and there's tornadoes everywhere and it sweeps them up and takes them far away from home. I'm talking about Wizard of Oz. So if you want to create cool effects like that, stick around and we'll get to it right away. First thing we're going to do is just set up our scene here. So I'm going to go to my front view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the shape of a tornado using my curves. So I'll collect my curve tool here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can create the shape here. And we'll edit this to make it look a little bit better. Okay, so that's a rough shape here. Let's now go to our vertex option and move these around a little bit. So I'm creating kind of this funnel at the top, just making sure the curves are smoothed out, and doing the same thing throughout the funnel here. I want this to be just more straight, and then curve back out at the bottom. So something like this looks pretty good. And we might want the bottom of our tornado funnel to be a little bit moved in, so not quite as wide as the top. And it's just going to smooth this out a little bit more. Okay, something like this. Hey, as always, these project files will be available on our website, studio4media.com. Head over there, and you could be able to get the project files at the blog, and that way you can follow along with us exactly as we're doing it. So, all right, so I got the curve made. I got some adjustments made to it as well. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go over to my Surfaces tab and go to Surfaces and hit Revolve. And then now I have this shape. It looks like a tornado. It's like an hourglass shape, kind of. So I'm going to leave it how it is. I like the shape of this. I'm going to go over here and go to Edit, Delete, All by Type, History. So just delete my history on it. And I'm going to change my number of spans here. So let me go over here to Edit NURBS. Let me go to Rebuild Surfaces right here and check my option box here. I'm going to set the value of 9 in my number of spans for the U and 8 in my number of spans for the V. Because over here you can see our max range for U and our max range for V are a lot different. What we're trying to get is that this is just a value from 0 to 1. So if I hit apply, you're going to notice it's going to go 1, 1. So 0 to 1, 0 to 1, that's what we want. So we got that completed, and we'll hit close. Now let's go over to our In Dynamics tab, and we'll get started with creating some particles. So I'm going to go back to my perspective view here, take a look at what we got. Everything's looking pretty good. Maybe I'll scale this down just a little bit. There we go. And I'll also just hide our curve. So Control H, hide the curve. Okay, so I'll select the funnel here. Let's just go ahead and make some emitters. So I'm going to go to in my In Dynamics tab. I'm going to go to nParticles, and I'm going to go to Create nParticles, and I'm going to create an emitter. And then I'm going to now have my emitter, my nParticles, and a nucleus all in my outliner over here. And I want to create another emitter, so I'm going to do the exact same thing. nParticles, create nParticles, create emitter, and now I have 2 emitters and 2 particle systems. So the reason why I'm doing this is because what the effect we're trying to get is we want to have the particles up at the top and spiraling down and meeting in the middle with the particles at the bottom. So we're going to need 2 emitters and 2 particle systems, and one will come from the top, one will come from the bottom. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and select nParticle 1, control select our revolved surface, and we will hit goal. Also, if I push play right now, you're going to notice a couple things. The reason why we're pushing this goal button is because right now we've applied that to particle 1, but we haven't applied it to our second particle system. And you're going to notice the difference it makes. If I push play, particle 1, which I have highlighted right now, will be bouncing around and then attaching to our object, whereas particle 2, if I select it, you notice it's just emitting from our emitter right here. So we want it to take on the shape of our funnel, and that's why we're going to select now particle 2, control select our revolved surface, go to nParticles, and hit goal. Now our particles should be, if I select both of those, both bouncing out and attaching to our revolved surface. Now these are obviously being a little bit too bouncy, so what we're going to want to do is lower down the goal smoothness. So let's go ahead and just select our nParticle, go to our attribute editor, go to nParticle shape 1, and then we will go to our goal weights options right down here, and we're going to change this goal smoothness down to a value of 0. And let's go ahead and just go up here real quick and make some another changes, like go into our collision, make sure self collide is turned off and collide is also turned off. Got those changes made. We're going to want to do the exact same thing with our second nParticles, so turn off collide, self collide, go down to goal weight and objects and turn that down to value of 0 and the goal smoothness. You're going to notice we're going to be doing a lot of things twice because we have 2 particle systems, so we're going to have to duplicate a lot of the same settings for both particle systems because we want them to look pretty much the same as it's revolving from the top and the bottom. So now if we push play, we solve that problem where the particles are bouncing too much. I'm going to go ahead and just select the particles so you can see it a little bit better. So if I push play now, they just stick to our funnel, which is great. That's exactly what we want. So next, let's go ahead and continue making some changes to these attributes. So I got my particle in 1 selected, so my first particle option selected. In the attribute editor, I'm going to scroll down to the particles tab. So let's see here, add dynamic attributes in the per particle array. So I'm going to add a general dynamic attribute, and then go over to my particle tab here. I'm going to select goal U and shift select goal V. Hit OK. And now you notice underneath my per particle attribute array, I have my goal V and my goal U here. So I want to right click on goal V and hit creation expression. I'm going to highlight my object name right here, middle mouse button click, and drag it into our expression editor right here. And this is the expression I'm going to write. So I'm going to say that our nParticle shape 1 equals rand, which stands for random, 0 to 1. I'm going to close that out. And that is all I'm going to do for that. Hit create, and now you can see our expression worked, and it's going over there, and it's working just fine. Next, I'm going to right click on my goal V, and I'm going to create a ramp. And we'll mess around with those ramp settings a little bit later. Let's go ahead and make some other adjustments while we're in the settings right now. Let's go to lifespan, and we'll change this from constant to random range and change the values up a little bit. So let's make the lifespan a value of 5 and the randomness value of 1. And then let's make the particle size a little bit bigger, so we'll do a value of 1. And for now, that should be good. Let's just go ahead and stick with that, not get ahead of ourselves. So we want to do the exact same thing with our emitter 2 as well. So let's go ahead and select our nParticle 2 and make those changes. So my lifespan mode will go to random range, value of 5, value of 1, and then my radius will be a value of, what did I say, 1, I think? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so now let's go down here and go to our dynamic attributes, hit general, and we'll select our goal U, goal V, hit OK, right click on our goal V, hit creation expression, do the same thing, drag our name down here, equals rand apostrophe 0, 1, and we'll close that out with a semicolon, hit create, and then we'll add a ramp. in our goal U. So create ramp, right click on that, hit create ramp. I think that is everything we need to do. So let's go ahead and hit play, and you're going to notice what should be happening if we did everything correctly. The particles should be coming up from the bottom to the top. So let's hit play here. So here we go, you have our particles, they're starting at the bottom and they're sucking up the funnel and coming out the top now. So I'm going to explain this a little bit, but I'm not going to explain it quite yet. I'm going to explain what we just did, but I'm not going to do it quite yet. So everything's working properly. Our particles are getting sucked up through the funnel and going at the top. But we want to make a few changes because remember we want some of the particles to start at the bottom, but we also want them to start at the top and then at the same time meet in the middle to create that funnel cloud. So let's go ahead and make those changes, and then I'll kind of explain what I'm doing here. So we go select our nParticle 1, and we're going to add some swirl to this so they're not just statically going up. We're actually going to make them revolve a little bit. So let's continue refining this this expression. So I'll right click on my goal V, creation expression, and I will change this to, in my particle area right here, right now it's set to creation. I want to change this to runtime after dynamics. And now I'm just going to add a quick expression. Go ahead and select this name, bring it down here. I'm going to say this is plus equals a value of 0.015. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding some swirl slightly to these particles, and I'm going to hit create. And that is very good. So hit done. If I push play now, you're going to notice now that instead of being static, if I highlight my particle 1, they're now being swirled in, and it's probably a little bit hard to see, but they're no longer just going straight up. They're turning, they're rotating. So that's what we wanted. Let's go ahead and also go to our ramp attributes. So goal U, I'm going to right click and go to edit ramp, and right now you're going to see that the ramp goes from white on the left to black on the right, and we have gray in the middle. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this third one here, hit the X underneath it, so we only have 2 points now, don't need that third one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the colors. So I want the black to be on the left and I want white to be on the right. And the reason why I'm doing this is because this directly affects where the particles start. So the reason why we created a ramp on our goal U is because we want these first particles to start at the top. So by reversing these colors, instead of starting at the bottom, which was white on the left, black on the right, now we switch these, and now our particles will spawn at the top and go to the bottom. So if I push play now, you're going to notice our particles are starting up here and then coming, and now they're meeting in the middle. There we go. So we solved that problem, and now you kind of have a better understanding of why we applied a ramp to that, and that's looking good. Let's go ahead and continue making some changes with this, and then we'll move over to our second particle system and do something very similar. So I'm going to click my output connection arrow located right here, and I'm just going to change these values real quick. Value of 0 is fine. I'm just going to bring down this max value to value of 0.5, hit enter, and you're going to notice that now these particles are going a lot slower. And they're also stopping in the middle where I want them to stop. So let's say that I didn't want them to meet quite in the middle. I want it to meet more towards the ground. If I do a value of 0.8, hit play, I can notice these are going to continue, go a little bit past the middle and stop right before the bottom. They're not going to actually spawn all the way to the end. So 0.5 is going to be alright for what we're doing, but just so you know how to make some adjustments later on, you can make that whatever value you want. If you notice, our second particle system is going all the way to the top and stopping once it reaches the end of our funnel, but like we said, we want them to meet in the middle. So this looks good. This is exactly what we want. Now let's go ahead and make some changes to our second particle system. We just want that one selected, and we're going to go to our nParticle shape 2, which is right where we want it, and make some changes to this expression, add that swirl to it. So we'll right click on goal V, hit creation expression, and make sure we have it set to runtime after dynamics. Pull this down, and we're going to say plus or equals to, and we're going to say 0.15. And then we'll just hit create and close it out. Now we have that swirl applied to it, and we're going to go ahead and make some changes to our ramp. So we'll right click and say edit ramp, and we just want to delete this gray in there just to make it the same as the other one. But we don't want to move the color around, remember, because we want this one to start at the bottom and then go up towards the top. So this is the right direction. And we are going to change the values of our output connection here, our min and our max value. So we'll click our output option box there. Our minimum value, though, we want to be 0.5. So this is a little bit opposite of what we did last time. So now if we push play, you're going to see that it starts at the bottom and then goes all the way up to the middle, and they both meet at the middle and they both stop at the middle. So that looks pretty good. And everything is working great. It looks like both of our particles are swirling too, which is exactly what we want, and they're both meeting in the middle at the exact same time. So we are off to a great start, and let's make some other adjustments. So right now what we're going to want to do is let's go ahead and change over from this particle system to a fluid system. So we're going to start emitting a fluid from these particles. So what I'll do is I will select my nParticle 1, and I'll go over to my Dynamics tab instead of in my nDynamics tab. I'll go to Fluid Effects, and I'll just say Create 3D Container. Now I have a 3D container created, and I'm going to select my nParticle 2, Control Select nParticle 1, and then Control Select my Fluid 1. I'll go to Fluid Effects, go down to Add Edit Contents, and I'm going to say Emit from Objects. Hit that. And what this is going to do is, well, first let me make a quick change to my fluid so you can see better what this is doing. I'll have my fluid 1 selected, go to my attribute editor, and I'm going to go down to the auto resize and just turn on auto resize, and that way we can see what's going on. And now that I have that, I can go ahead and hide my resolved surface. So I'll Control H, hide that, and now you get a better understanding of what's going on. Now you can see if I push play, we have a fluid system being created that is starting to look more like a tornado. So now it's mimicking what our particle system was doing, but it's doing it with a fluid simulation. So we're going to be able to make a more realistic cloud-like dust-looking tornado, which is exactly what we want. So that is working great. Let's go ahead and make some changes to our fluid now. So we'll select our fluid, and I'm going to go to my attribute editor, and for now I'm going to turn on disable evaluation. So the very top of my fluid shape 1, turn this on. This is going to stop our simulation from running, and I'm going to do this because I'm going to cache out my particles real quick. So I'll select particle 1, and I'll control select my particle 2. Well, I'm going to do them individually. So I'll select nParticle 1, go back to my nDynamics tab, go to my nCache and say create new cache, and you can save it to wherever you want by the option box here. This is fine. I already have one, so I'll just replace it. So I'm just caching this out real quick, just to make sure my computer's running fine, everything's running smoothly, and that way I don't run into any problems later on down the road. So that's pretty much getting done, cached out, and I'll do the same thing with my nParticle 2. Highlight that, go to nCache, create new cache, give that a second, and then we can go ahead and after that's done, we're going to hide our particle systems because now we can just work with our fluid attributes and make some changes there. So that's looking good. Let's go ahead and select nParticle 2, Control Select nParticle 1, and Control H to hide both of those. And now you can see just our cloud fluid simulation here. And if I push play, you're going to be able to see that a lot better. Actually, let's go ahead and click disable evaluations, and that way you can see our fluid simulation a lot better. And now we can start to see the swirl effect a lot more, and you can start to see how this is starting to look more like a tornado, where it's meeting in the middle and then growing in size. But we still have a couple of options that need to be changed, because you can see here it continues to go all the way up through the roof, and that does not look like a tornado. So it is a cool effect, though, possibly an atom bomb effect. If you make some more changes, you can see how we can get something similar to that. So there's a cool effect for you, but that's for a different tutorial. So now that we have those particles hidden, let's make some changes to our fluid shape here. So fluid shape 1 in our attribute editor, and let's go ahead and actually let's make some changes to our emitter. So I'll select my fluid emitter and go down to my fluid attributes and just mess around with some of these settings here. So I'm going to bump up my density and voxel size to the value of 30. I'm going to go down to my fluid drop off and turn that to a value of 1. And then I'm going to click this drop down box here, my fluid emission turbulence, and I'm going to turn the turbulence up to a value of 1. And that is looking good. Now if you notice here in my fluid options, I do have a fluid emitter 1 and a fluid emitter 2, and that's because we did have a particle 1 and particle 2 system. So similarly to how we did it with our nParticles, where we had to make the same changes to nParticle 1 and nParticle 2, we have to make the same changes to our fluid emitter 1 and fluid emitter 2. So I've made those changes to fluid emitter 1. Now I'm going to go over to fluid emitter 2 and make the same changes. So start at the top here, not to get confused, and I will increase my density and voxel size to a value of 30. Go down and fluid drop off, change that to a value of 1. Turbulence, value of 1. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, these are all pretty self-explanatory. I'm bumping up the size of the particles right here. Turbulence, adding some more of that swirl turbulence feeling to it. So if I push play now, you're going to notice a big difference. Now you can see the turbulence and swirl starting to take effect. And you can see our cloud is a lot thicker. And so that is that. We still have that problem with it going through the cloud, so let's go ahead and address that now. So I'll select my fluid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to my channel box, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees in the X. So I'll hit X, 90 degrees. This is now rotated. And I'm going to go to my attribute editor, do fluid shape 1, and make some changes into my auto resize. So scroll down to auto resize, and I'm going to resize the margins. So I'm going to say auto resize margin value of 3. And let's make some changes to our content details. So I'm going to look at my density here and make some changes in here. My density scale I'm going to bump up to a value of 1. Buoyancy, take that down to a value of 0. And dissipation value of 10. Now these are all very common attributes to be messing around with fluid simulations. So I'm assuming with this tutorial you guys know a little bit about fluid simulations and you know what, for the most part, what these values do. So let's go ahead and push play, and we'll see what we get now. So we've got that nice swirl, and it's coming up and meeting in the middle, and everything's looking really good. You'll notice that we did fix that problem where the fluid simulation just continues on and goes through. So it's looking really good now, and yeah, we got to make some more changes and we'll make it look a lot better. For now, since the simulation is running a little bit slower, and for those of you that don't have quite as powerful as a system, you might notice it's running slower. So this might be a good time to cache out our fluid simulation. So just in case you're wondering, I'm running a system with 32 gigabytes memory, NVIDIA graphics card with 4 gigabytes of DDR5 dedicated memory. So that's the system I have, i7 processor. So it's not bad. It's not a bad system at all. So and even doing these type of fluid simulations and different particles makes the system run really slow. It's really taxing on the system. So caching out your simulations is a good habit to get into. So I'll select my fluid shape here. Let's go ahead and before we cache this out, I'm going to make some more changes because once you have it in the cache, if you make changes, you have to recache it out. But just to free up some space, I'll go ahead and do nParticles, control. So I'll select my 2 nParticles here. I'll just go ahead and delete this cache because I no longer need it. So in cache, delete cache. And let's go ahead and make some changes to these emitters here. So I will select my first emitter and go to my rate per second. I'm going to bump it up to a value of 1000. Hit enter and do the same thing with the second emitter and see what that looks like. So there we go. So now we're getting that thicker tornado look and feel, and this is, like I said, where you're going to start noticing things are slowing down. So that's why I wanted to wait until we get to that point before we cache it out. It is a little weird that this is meeting directly in the middle. Don't know if I like that so much. If we change the way that looks. You guys remember where that's at. So I might go back in and change that, but for now I'll just leave it how it is. Let's go ahead and select our fluid and make some more changes just real quick, and then we will cache it out and we can continue working on. So select my fluid, go to my attribute editor here, and let's go ahead and do my first fluid emitter, make some changes. Under my basic emitter attributes, I'll bring that down, and let's look at our, let's turn on use distance, because right now our min and our max distance are just grayed out. So if we check use distance, we can make some changes here. I'm just going to leave the min distance 0 is fine. Max distance, turn to a value of 0.5, and do that to my other emitter. Let's see here. What can I do to clean up my scene? Let's go and take a look at this and see how it looks. There we go. So still got the thickness to it, but not so thick that it's that it looks fake. Now that we have this set up, we can go and delete our curve. No longer need that curve, so just clean that up a little bit. Let's go ahead and move on to something a little bit different. So I'm gonna turn back on my revolve surface. So I'll go to Control Shift H, or Shift Control H, whatever the hotkey is for show. Let's go ahead and display show selection. There we go. So I will, with that selected and shown, oh, I think I showed my particles instead of my revolve surface. So let me hide those particles. There we go. So now we have my surface here. I'm going to go to the side view and take a look at this. Just back my simulation up so there's not there. And I'm going to create a curve that is a straight line essentially through the funnel here. So I'll hit 4 to bring up my wireframe mode. Select my curve. I essentially just want this to be a straight line. So start out outside of the funnel, go straight down all the way through the funnel. There we go. So let me select the vertices on this and just make sure that they're all in line. Look pretty straight to me. And let's go ahead and go to our object mode and select this curve. I'm going to go back to my outliner here. Select my curve, and I'm going to control select my fluid shape. So fluid 1. I'm going to go to fields. Let's see here. There it is, fields. And I'll go down to volume curve. So select that. And right now my volume curve is really small, and you can understand what this is doing here in a little bit. I'll explain it once we do it. So bear with me here. So I'm going to increase the size of this a little bit. I'm going to go to my fluid 1, fluid shape 1, attributes. I'm going to turn this off just real quick. I'm going to hide a couple of the other things too. So hit disable evaluations. That way it doesn't eat up my memory. And I will now go to my volume access field here and make some changes. Let's bump up the size of this. Let's see, how big does this need to be? Pretty big. Let's just do a value of 25 in the magnitude, and then my radius is what we need to increase in order to make this bigger. So I'll go down to my volume control attributes and bump up the radius here. So let's do a value of 20 and see. That is just about perfect. We want it to be as big as our funnel, but we want it to fit pretty tight as well. So I'm going to do a value of 19. And yours is going to be different, no doubt. But this is kind of the fit you want to have with it. So, you know, not so tight that, like, if I did like a value of 17, it's like right on it. You don't want that. So let's say a value of 19 looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and make some more changes. So we'll scroll down to our volume speed attributes. Here we are, volume speed attributes, and just change the along axis to a value of 0, and then the around axis to a value of -10. Well, let's see what this looks like. So, you know, we notice now that we have this big arrow that's pointing clockwise this way. And let's push play, and we want to see, well, it's not going to play anything right now because we've hidden it, but we'll turn that on, and so we can see. We want to make sure this arrow is pointing in the same direction as our fluid is rotating. So let me go ahead and uncheck disable evaluations now that we have everything that we need. Push play, and you can see, so the swirl is happening in this direction, which is exactly what I want. So we'll stop that, and now you can see the computer is getting really slow, and now it's a good time to go ahead and cache this out. So I'll back this up, hit disable evaluations, select my nParticle 1, control select nParticle 2, go to nCache, and I will create new cache, and I'll just replace the existing. Let this cache out for a second. Of course, we have it hidden, so I'm not going to be able to see it, but we can see it down there in the time slider. How long it's going to take? Looks like it's going pretty fast, so I'm not going to pause the video. I'm just going to let it do its thing. Already, we're getting a pretty sweet look in our tornado effect, and here in a little bit, we'll make some changes to our lighting and everything, and make it look a lot better. So this is almost getting done, getting cached out. Let's go ahead and make some changes now to our fluid shape. So now that that's done, I will turn back on my fluid simulation by unchecking that disabled evaluations, and I'm going to hide my surface because we've done what we need to do. All right, so let's go to fluid 1 and let's make some changes here. Let's take a look at it just to see what changes we need to make. So the nParticles are cached out. We haven't cached out our fluid yet, so we'll do that here in a little bit, but I want to make some changes first. Let's see. Let's go ahead and let's make some changes to our shading here. Let this play out just a little bit so we can take a look at the way it's getting shaded right now. So I'll stop it right there. And this is probably a good time to go ahead and cache out our fluid because it is really slow. So this might take a while. If it does take too long, I will stop the video. So I'm going to go to we want to go to our dynamics tab for the fluid to be cached out. So select our fluid, go to fluid in cache, and then we'll say create new cache. And this looks like it's going to take a little bit longer, so I'll go ahead and pause the video and start it back up again once it gets done. Alright, so I got this thing cached out here. We'll go ahead and push play and take a look at it. So one thing I noticed right off the bat is we had this kind of weird vortex looking thing at the very beginning. It kind of like goes in, then comes back out, goes in, comes back out. Looks a little bit weird, but once we have it set and the funnel is created, it looks really good. I really like where this is headed. It might be a little bit too wispy. You can see here kind of the wispiness of it. That has to do with the density. We can change that. Or the dissipation rather, we can change that to get rid of that, or sometimes we can change that just by messing around with some of the shading options. So let's go ahead and do that now, and also the shading options might help get rid of that vortex like effect in the beginning, or that turbulence effect that we don't like. So so with my fluid container selected, I'll go to my fluid shape, scroll down until I get to my shading, and if I go to the opacity here, you can see I can move this around. Whoa, we don't want to do that. Let's change its position to like 0.5, and you can see I'm crushing it, and so I get rid of a lot of those that wispiness. So I can do that. 0.5 is obviously too much, but I can change this around and also change my input bias around to get the desired effect I want. So doing that helps with that wispiness, as well as even helping with the vortex in the beginning. So for now, I might just leave this at the default because I'm not seeing anything I really like that's that different about it. So I'm just going to leave that where it's at. But I'm going to go down here to the lighting. I'll click on self shadow, and immediately you're going to notice that this is looking already a lot better. Just by turning on the self shadows, looks way more like a tornado. And then that the vortexing look effect doesn't look as bad. And once it gets going, it looks really cool. So That's looking pretty good. I'm liking that. I am going to turn down the input bias a little bit though, because that wispiness is a little bit too much for me. Something like that. All right, I like that. I'm noticing though the resolution is pretty bad, so I might bump up the resolution here, and let's go to our auto resize, and let's turn up our max resolution, and we'll put that to a value of 1,000. So this is going to start making the simulation run a lot slower, but it'll be worth it in the end. So I'll change my margins to a value of 8, bump that up a little bit. And to help out with that vortex, I'll just put a little bit of dampening on it. So let's go to my dynamic simulation, which is up here. And let's put some damp on there. So not that much, like a value of 0.03 maybe. And we'll see what that does. So the simulation's running a little bit slower. Still getting that vortex a little bit, but when it runs full speed, that might be a little bit better. Let's change some of those other settings here. Let's change the friction setting. We'll turn that up to a value of let's just do a value of 1, and then our viscosity value of 0.1. Let's see what that changes there. Okay, so that looks looking pretty good. I like that. Let's go ahead and increase our resolution again so we can get a better idea of what this is going to look like once we have our final resolution. So I'm going to go to my high detail solver, and I'm going to let's do all grids, and then let's turn up the quality to 500. And the simulation rate scale I will turn up to, or let's turn it down to 0.5. All right. Let's see here. Let's see what that looks like and see how much that slowed up my machine. Okay, not too bad. Looking good. Let's mess around with some of these settings here. Let's look at this density scale. Let's turn this up to a value of 1.5. And then let's put a little bit of swirl in there as well. So that would be under the velocity. Put some more swirl in there. Let's bump it up to value 10. And there's a little bit of noise to mix it up a little bit and see if that helps out. Gives it more of a tornado effect. So it's really spinning now. I think I like the way that looks better. Okay, so don't freak out, but this is obviously a lot different than where we left off. So there's a couple different reasons why I'm continuing the tutorial this way as opposed to just telling you all the values that I put in it in order to get this effect. So with dynamic simulations, the simulation is going to be different for everybody that makes their own simulation. So if your curve was different, you're going to have a different effect. So I can't really give you the exact values to input because there's no way it's going to turn out exactly how mine looks. So rather than just give you a bunch of numbers and tell you to put in the same numbers I did, and you guys get really frustrated because it's not turning out the way mine did, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how I got to this point and explain all the different the options that I used in order to get this effect and this look. So I'm going to play this out just real quick. It does go a little bit slow. This is after it's already been cached out, so takes up quite a bit of computer space. But you can see here what I've done is I've made it more wispy, so it's like actual dust getting whisked up in the air, and then it eventually connects right there in the middle, and has a pretty good looking funnel. So really happy with the way this turned out, and let's go ahead and dive into the options and how I got it to look this way. That way you guys can create your own. So right off the bat, we're just we got the fluid selected in the fluid shape options, and what I want to go over first is probably the thing that's going to make the biggest difference, and that's in the shading tab here. So in the shading tab, the first thing I did was I changed the color. So it's normally, I think it's either just solid white, which if it was solid white right now, if I exit this out, you can see you got that cloudy look right there. So I just added the brown into it, whichever color it was, I don't remember, but a brown color, and you can add whatever color you want. You can get really crazy with it. I chose to make it a little bit more believable, maybe like dust getting flown up, something like that. And this is of course a solid color, so I had mine be more of a gradient. So I had white, I believe, and then a brown. So it's a little bit more of a gradient, and you can move these around in order to get the desired effect you want. Maybe something like that is more what you want, and that looks pretty cool. So that's what I did in the color option there. I also put the color input, instead of being constant, I changed it to density. And this means the color is based off what the density of the fluid effect is doing. So that got me that effect there. One tab down, I have my incandescence. So this is different as well. I have this going from black to this brown color. This, of course, could be any color you want. And I also have it set to center gradient. So instead of being constant, I'm putting a center gradient. So it's going to be in the center. And I'm going to change this brown color to something more vibrant so you see what's going on here. So if I had a constant, obviously it's everywhere. If I have my center gradient, it's in the center. And normally by default, your input bias is set to 0. That's what this looks like. I scrolled mine down, so I squashed it to be just in the center. And then I just added a different color brown than what I had on the outside, and so that way it looks, like you have that gradient there. Like maybe the dust in the middle is now a different color because it's being combined. So that was how I got that effect. Scrolling down here, now we have the opacity settings. Okay, so by default, this is what it looks like. Okay, what I've done is I have increased my input bias, which makes it get that wispy feel. So just by increasing the input bias, I think I did 0.3, something like that. And then I've crushed, I took the very topmost point and I moved it to the left to also give it more volume. You can see there all of a sudden we've just got this huge looking tornado cloud. And then if you select the furthest left point and change that from linear to smooth, it's going to smooth this out and make it look a lot better. And now you can bump up your input bias and get that wispy clouds, but they're not so overwhelming. It's in a good enough spot that it will dissipate rather quickly. So, and also the opacity input is set to density as well instead of just being constant, which would give you a. So change that to density, and you got that nice looking tornado. So we have that completed. Scrolling down, I skipped a bunch of these options, didn't do anything here. I did, however, underneath the textures option, I turned on texture incandescence and texture opacity. And if I turn those off, you'll see what those do. So I just use the defaults for this, and just adds a little bit more depth to it. So I did that. And scrolling down here, one of the main differences you're going to notice is when you get to the lighting tab. I'm going to turn this off right now. By default, self shadow is turned off. All I did was turn that on, and now you have this self shadow effect. And I just left these all on the default, so nothing special there. So that is the texturing tab. So that's the texturing and the shading of the actual tornado. Now, I did do some different dynamic changes as well to change the actual simulation, and I want to go over those really quickly as well. Hopefully that lighting and shading made sense. It's really just rather basic, actually, just turning on self shadow, changing the color up a little bit, and yeah, and it makes a huge difference. So let's go ahead and go here into my content details and take a look at some of these options here. So we did change some of these here. We have the density scale set to 2. buoyancy at 0, dissipation at 10. I believe we changed these beforehand, but just in case, I just wanted to show you what values I have there. Dissipation is going to how fast are these clouds going to dissipate after they're created. So just bump that up a little bit. And down here in the velocity, I made quite a bit of changes in the velocity. I changed the swirl and the noise. So by default, those are both set to 0. So if you remember, beforehand it was very much just a straight like funnel shape, very tornado looking, like a third grader drew it, just tornado. What the swirl does is it breaks it up a little bit, so now you have these pockets of air that looks like they're getting sucked into each other, and that's why I bumped that up to such a high value of 15. Now mess around with this swirl value, and you're going to notice a big difference in the way that this looks, like the way that it comes together, and the way that the clouds form in order to create that tornado. Also, the noise is just going to randomize this effect and add to that. So just use a lower value on the noise, and yeah, experiment with those two, and you're going to notice a big difference. Something else I changed that makes a big difference is the dynamic simulation. So by default, I believe these 3 right here are set to 0. Gravity is 9.8. Just going to leave that alone. That's fine. But the viscosity, the friction, and the damp are all set at 0. So I went ahead and changed these options, and these are going to make a huge difference when it comes to your simulation. And these 3 options, fine-tuning these, is what's going to give you the look you want, and is going to make it not look so flat and so simulated and look more like real dust. Okay, so let's go over these in a little bit more detail. So my viscosity, what this does is this represents the resistance of the fluid, how thick the fluid material is. So when this value is turned up to a high value, the fluid flows like it's tar, really thick. Okay, but when it's a smaller value, it flows more like water. So we want something that's not quite water, but still is dissipates rather fast, and it's like a cloud wispy effect, it's like a cloud or dust. That's why I've bumped it up to a value of 0.3. Now, depending on what your curve looked like when you first made this tornado, if it had like a shorter funnel, or if it had like it went out longer, I mean, these values are going to need to be changed. So you can start off with a 0.3 and see how that looks, and then from there it's probably going to need to be changed. So the friction is, this is the internal friction when directly based from the velocity. So it ties into the velocity of the tornado. So I put this at a value of 3, and that worked out rather well for me. Feel free to play around with that one as well and see what I'm sorry, 0.3 is what I put it at. See if it makes a difference for your tornado as well. Now the damp, I just put a little bit of damp, and what the damp does is it defines the amount that the velocity is damped towards 0. So at a value of 1, the velocity is totally suppressed. It's not going to go anywhere. So remember if we had that bubbling effect, or that weird looking effect when we first got our cache, by turning up that damp, it helps the simulation from having those strong winds just build up and leading to the instability and everything. So just put a little bit of damp in there so it could form the tornado but not kind of go too crazy. So those are the only options I changed. These options up here directly affect the simulation as well as the density options and your contents details. So play around with those. Like I said, the reason why I decided to do it like this was because your options, I guarantee, are going to be different. If you plug in the exact same values as mine and you get the same simulation, let me know and I'll buy you a pizza, because there's no way that ever happens. So every simulation is different, and I want you to know what those options do and which options to change. That way you can create whatever type of effect you want. And maybe you don't like how wispy this tornado is. Maybe you don't like how thick those the ground dust is, or whatever. So you want to change it yourself. Now you know how to do it. Now you know how to change that. So go back through, watch this a couple times. I know that we went through this rather fast, these last couple of options, but I'm just assuming that you guys know a little bit about fluid simulations. You know a little bit about these options. These are pretty common options, and just wanted to go over the ones I used in order to change it. So this is pretty much it. This is the tutorial I have for you guys. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully it was easy to follow along. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, take a look at the website, studio4media.com. Got a bunch of exciting stuff getting ready to come out, as always. And looking forward to seeing you guys on the next tutorial.